Hi, my name is Amy Wheeler-Sutton, and I'm a member of the Vermont PBIS State Leadership Team. And I'm here to talk to you today about what families need to know about positive behavioral interventions and supports. And we're going to refer to positive behavioral interventions and supports as PBIS from here on out throughout the presentation. So today we're going to talk about what PBIS means, how PBIS looks in Vermont, the rationale behind PBIS, who's involved, the tiers of intervention that are involved, and some evidence-based practices that are part of PBIS. We're also going to talk quite a bit about the role of the family in PBIS and give you some resources to explore. So to begin, PBIS is a school-wide approach to creating a positive and safe climate in which students can learn and grow. It's used with all students and across all school environments. So that includes the cafeteria, assemblies, the bus, anywhere that students are throughout school buildings. And you can see a picture on the side from Allenbrook School teachers when they were beginning to implement PBIS. So in Vermont, PBIS began in 2007, and throughout the years, you can see the chart on the bottom shows the growth of PBIS, and currently 48% of Vermont schools, which is 143 schools, are implementing PBIS, and 91% of supervisory unions or supervisory districts. So that's 52 of our supervisory unions and supervisory districts. So it's really grown throughout the years, which is very exciting, and we have new schools joining this year as well. So you might be wondering whether your child's school uses PBIS, and they may be a PBIS school even if you've never heard that acronym. Sometimes when it's introduced to students and families, they just refer to it however their school in particular refers to it. So the ways that you would know is if your school has clear school-wide expectations that are visible. So I came from Dothanbrook School, and our expectations are we are caring, safe, and responsible. So if you've heard something that sounds like that in your child's school, that might be an indicator that they're using PBIS. And they would also have a system for acknowledging positive behavior. So your children might come home with bucks or paws or some kind of token that they were given when they were exhibiting positive behavior. You can also check and see if your child's school is a PBIS school by searching our directory at pbisvermont.org, and all of our schools that are active PBIS schools are listed there with contact information for the people in charge of PBIS at the school. So when schools are exploring implementing PBIS, the results that we're able to show them are pretty powerful. So when schools take a positive approach toward addressing discipline by using PBIS, their school climate improves, their suspensions, expulsions, and dropouts decrease, and the students' time in class and on task increases. So instead of students being sent to the office and spending their time there, they're in the classroom more, and teachers are able to spend more time on instruction, which means that students are spending more time on learning. So really the rationale behind PBIS is that when a student doesn't know how to read, we teach them. When they don't know how to add, we teach them. When they don't know how to swim or drive, we teach them. But when a student doesn't know how to behave, we often punish. And instead of punishing, we can do the same as we do for reading, adding, swimming, and driving. We can teach them what the expected behaviors are and how to exhibit them, what they look like and sound like. So in schools, the PBIS leadership team is made up of a variety of staff who are in charge of developing and carrying out the school-wide PBIS. That might include the principal, general educators, special educators, school counselors, cafeteria workers. Anyone who's a part of the school community can be on the PBIS team. Schools appoint an in-school and district level PBIS coordinator that is the liaison between the school or the district and our state leadership team. And parents can also be a member of the school-wide team. And we'll talk a little bit more later about how you could get involved in that. At the team usually meets monthly, and they review school-wide student data. So often PBIS schools have a data information system where student discipline data is input into the system. And so that team sits down and really looks at the data across the school, and they use that data to make decisions about interventions, practices, and system changes. So for instance, if it were November and they were really seeing a spike in behavior during recess, during third grade, let's say, they might sit down and kind of explore that further. Why might behaviors be increasing at this time? And they might realize, okay, we haven't had snow yet, the kids are bored at recess, and they're resorting to some less pro-social behaviors. So they might reteach expectations at recess and might include some ideas for what games and activities students can do when there's no snow but it's cold. So the basic foundation of PBIS and what the framework is based on is that for 80% of the students in a school, they're going to be successful when they're accessing universal supports. So those are the supports that all students get. You might find that 10 to 15% of students may need some targeted supports, and that's that yellow zone. And we'll talk more about what targeted supports might look like. And 1 to 5% of students in a school may need intensive level supports. The students at each of those different tiers are also still going to be receiving universal supports, and they may, it's very fluid, so students are not always going to remain in one tier of that pyramid. So at the universal level, the basic foundation is that schools define positively stated universal behavioral expectations for all settings. So these expectations apply to every setting that a student travels through. So like I said at Dothan Brook, that was be caring, safe, and responsible. So the students are explicitly taught the behavioral expectations, then they're positively reinforced for exhibiting expected behaviors. So you can see on the right is one school's ticket that is handed out. And then they're retaught the expectations based on data like I was just mentioning about recess. PBIS is really about changing the adult behavior as well. The goal is to reach a ratio of 5 to 6 positive statements to 1 negative statement. So if you are interacting with a student, the goal is for 5 to 6 of those interactions to be positive for every 1 negative interaction. So those were the universal supports, and when schools are trained, they start at the universal level and really delve pretty deeply into what does that look like for all students. And once they are implementing with fidelity, they're able to move to the targeted level of supports. And targeted supports really provide students with more structure, predictability, and feedback about their behavior so that their behavior can improve. So that might include interventions such as a small group social skills instruction, mentoring, check-in, check-out, and including increased home-to-school communication in all of those interventions. And check-in, check-out is when a student enters the building and is first checking in with a positive adult who's setting them on the course of their day in a positive direction. They might have a behavior plan and are checking in to make a goal around their behavior for the day. And then throughout the day, their teacher is going to be checking in with them about their progress. And at the end of the day, they check out with that same positive adult. And check-in, check-out is in largely all of our PBIS schools that are implementing at the targeted level because it's an evidence-based practice. The targeted team is charged with monitoring student progress and gathering and using data to make decisions about what's working or not working for that student and their interventions. There are students that might have a mental health disorder or a significant behavior challenge that's going to require them to receive a high degree of individualized attention and support at the intensive level. And some interventions for students at the intensive level are conducting a functional behavioral assessment, or an FBA, or implementing a behavior support plan, a BSP. And usually the BSP comes from the FBA. So a functional behavioral assessment will be conducted, which I'll explain a little bit more about. And then a behavior support plan comes out of that FBA to be used on a daily basis with the student. So a functional behavioral assessment is an in-depth process to learn more about a student's behavior. And DASH is an acronym that can be used to describe the different steps of an FBA. So first, the child's team really works to define the behavior in an observable and measurable way, so that they really know what they're talking about and what they're looking to change. They gather information by interviewing staff and the students, and oftentimes the families. And they really specify routines where and when that behavior occurs. So a student may be very successful during a time of day, so maybe during art, and so they'll look at, why is this student successful during art? What are the different factors for that? And when are they not successful, and what are different about those two routines or areas of their day? And then they're going to summarize where, when, and why the behavior occurs. They're also going to do some observation during those different times of day to verify that what they interviewed the staff about is really happening during the day. And then they're going to make a hypothesis about where, when, and why the behaviors occur, and use that hypothesis to develop the behavior support plan. There are really two goals of the behavior support plan, and you can see an example of what one might look like on the right-hand side of your screen. The first goal is to reduce the problem behavior, but the second goal is to really teach an alternative behavior that is more desired. So for instance, this student's goals were be a bucket filler, which is a curriculum that's used to help students use positive words with friends and adults. So his goal was use kind and safe words. And his other goal was to be a whole body listener, which is another curriculum that he was taught, using your ears, eyes, brain, body to be a good listener. So during each time of the day, his teacher worked with him to figure out where he was, how he did during that time of day, and any notes that will go back to that check and check out adult in the building so that they have a better idea of what that time of day looked like for the student. And then he was, we added up his total for the day, and then this went home every day. So his adult at home had a good picture of how he was doing on those two goals. And this was for a kindergarten student. So we adapted our normal behavior support plan a little bit because of his age. So schools collect and analyze the data that comes from these behavior support plans so that the plan can be modified accordingly, and his day can be modified accordingly. So if this student were going throughout his day and he was very successful with these goals during most times of day, but let's say during number corner, he really fell apart every day, maybe that means he needs a break before number corner, or he needs some extra support, or maybe he's really struggling with that academic subject. So the behavior support plan can really serve to inform the schools. So PBIS requires schools to identify and use practices that have been proven to be effective or evidence-based in each of those three tiers for supports for students. So that really eliminates that kind of hit or miss when addressing behavior problems, and causes schools to have more success when implementing PBIS, because they're using those evidence-based practices that have been shown to be successful for students. So you might be wondering what the role of the family is in PBIS. And really the main goal is for you to learn about PBIS at your child's school, to know what's going on, and then to provide feedback to the school about how you think it's going for your student. A lot of times we have feedback about how it's going on a school-wide level, but it would be really great for schools to know how it's working on an individual child level. You can ask to participate on either our state leadership team, the leadership team at the district level, or on your school's leadership team. And a really great way for parents to be involved is if you have some kind of skill or your business has some kind of service to help out the PBIS program in some way. So for instance, if you work in public relations, you might offer to help design a brochure for your school's PBIS program. Or if you have a skill, you could offer to teach it as part of a school-wide reward. So schools that are implementing PBIS have school-wide rewards usually once a month. And so, for instance, one of our schools in Vermont recently did a screen printing reward where all of the students were able to learn how to screen print on a t-shirt. So if you did that as part of your work or as part of a hobby, offering to teach it you would have the support of the teachers. Obviously, you wouldn't be on your own, but that would be a really great way to help the school come up with a creative school-wide reward. You also could offer to help design some parent involvement activities so that you can learn more and also other parents can learn more about PBIS. So some questions that you might ask at school that would allow you to learn more would be what is in place at the universal level of PBIS, school-wide, and in the classrooms. So what does PBIS look like in my child's classroom? What are the school-wide and classroom behavioral expectations? How will the school communicate with me if my child needs extra support for their behavior? So if the school is looking at their data and realizing that your child might need some extra support, how are you going to be notified about that? And how can you work with the school to promote PBIS at home? So if you're struggling with your child's behavior at home, this might be a technique that you try at home as well as at school. And if your child is in a PBIS school, they're going to be familiar with the concepts and language, and you might see some success at home as well. So this is just an example matrix that you could use at home. On the left-hand side, you would set what are your expectations. So this family said help out, own your behavior, and manners count. And then their child received some kind of indicator during each of those routines of the day about whether they were satisfying those expectations and meeting those expectations. So this would be an example of how you could carry over PBIS into the home environment. That would kind of bridge that gap for students. So if there are some additional questions that you might ask if you find that your child is struggling at school. And you can see those questions here. These are going to help you to dig deeper and help ensure that your child gets the supports that they need. So you might ask, what evidence-based interventions will help my child? What assessments are going to be used to develop a behavior plan if that's what your child needs? How will the school inform you about results of collecting information? How will you be notified and involved if your child needs targeted or intensive supports? And what resources are available in the school and the community to help with improving my child's behavior? And the idea is you're really not on your own. So the school and community are there to help support you in improving your child's behavior and helping your child see more success. So if your student is receiving targeted or intensive supports, you should be involved with your child's evaluation, education, and behavior plan because really you know your child best. You know about their development, their medical history, their strengths, their interests, and their needs. And that can be a really important resource to the team when they're creating an effective behavior support plan. So some students are not always able to identify what their strengths are, what their interests are, and parents have a really good grasp on that material that the school might not have seen in the school setting. So strong partnerships between the family and the school really help to create consistency across settings, and when there is a strong partnership, we really see improved results for the child. There are also community resources that are available if your child is struggling. You might access mental health counseling or intensive family-based services or wraparound. And if your child needs services from multiple agencies, for instance, the ones seen on the right, he or she may benefit from a coordinated services plan. So that's something else you can inquire about at school that really helps families to have all of the services be on the same page and ensure that those services are going to happen. So sometimes families ask, how can my child's school become a PBIS school? And that really takes some work on the part of the school. So the first most important piece is that staff buy into the concept of implementing PBIS. So we recommend that schools ensure that 80% of their staff truly buy in and believe that PBIS can help their schools. They really need support from the leadership and the administration. It's a commitment that they have to make that takes some time and some training and some resources. So if your child's school is interested in becoming a PBIS school, on our website on the Get Started tab is really a detailed explanation of how schools become a PBIS school. So that's some information that you could give to your child's school if that's something that was of interest to you. So we have some resources available for you if you would like to learn more about PBIS. There's a National Technical Assistance Center, that's pbis.org, and there's a wealth of information for schools and for families on that website. I think that's actually where I got that home matrix from. So there's things like that and more on their website. There's also a wealth of resources on the PBIS Vermont website and more specific information to Vermont. And we also have a professional development calendar on our website that that parents can also access those trainings if they're of interest to you. There's also another organization called the Association for Positive Behavioral Support, and that one's an international organization that also has a great deal of resources on their website. And then, of course, the Vermont Family Network. You can see their phone number and email address there. And Vermont Family Network is a family support and advocacy organization. So they can really answer lots of your questions about behavior, PBIS, and also parent involvement in PBIS. So if this webinar has kind of perked your interest and you'd like to learn more, you can contact the Vermont Family Network. And lastly, the Vermont Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health is an organization that supports families and children where the child is experiencing or is at risk for emotional, behavioral, or mental health challenges. So you can see their phone number and website as well. So we have some questions. I'm going to read the questions because you won't be able to see them. The first question is, you said that PBIS is for all students. Does this include students with individualized education programs, IEPs, and 504 plans? So the answer to that is definitely. Those students are going to receive all of the universal supports that all students in the building receive. And they may need some additional supports at the targeted or intensive levels, or they may not. So there are students who are on an IEP, possibly for a reading disability, and their social emotional behavior is perfectly fine, and they're exhibiting all of the expected behaviors, and so they're really just going to access those universal supports. If they need additional supports in other areas, then they can definitely access targeted or intensive supports when needed. The second question is, what does it mean for a school to implement with fidelity? So that's a great question. That means that they are implementing in a way that is satisfying all requirements and is going to mean that their program is successful. So they're having an impact, PBIS is having an impact on the positive impact on their behavior and their academics, and they're seeing growth in a decrease of unexpected behaviors. They have a leadership team that is functioning at a high level, and their students and staff all understand PBIS and know what the expectations are. So the next question is, in my son's school, it doesn't seem that the support staff are using PBIS. They're really focusing on correcting the children. As a parent, what can I do? So that's also a great question. And sometimes, as parents, you might not have the full picture, but if what you're seeing in your experience is not something that you feel comfortable with, it's always best to start with that staff member and see if there's anything you can talk to with that staff member about what they're doing that you're seeing that might be concerning. And if you're feeling that initial connection with the support staff person is not successful, you might talk to your student's teacher or their school counselor. And if that level is not successful, you might consider approaching the school principal and seeing what other techniques could be used with your student that you feel might be more successful. And it could be a matter of lack of training. So if support staff were trained a long time ago when that's the main method of instruction was correction, they might just be doing what they know. So it might just be a matter of some additional education that would help the staff be working more successfully with your student. The next question is, how is the PBIS reward process different for a high school using PBIS, and does PBIS work as well at the high school level? And I actually just met with a K through 12 team yesterday who's going to be working to implement PBIS, and they're really thinking about what does this look like at the high school level, and something that's important at the high school level is whether the students buy in. So really including students on that leadership team and helping them to have input into what PBIS looks like at their school, and really I see it as kind of setting behavioral norms as, well, this is what we do here. So those behavioral expectations can kind of help kids to hold each other accountable at the high school level. And the reward process might look different. So in an elementary school, a student might be receiving a gem or a token. At the high school level, it might look differently, and the rewards or the celebrations are probably definitely going to look different. A dance party in the middle of the day at the high school might not be so successful versus at the elementary school, it's a blast. So really involving the students on what they would like to earn is how PBIS can be successful at the high school level. The next question is, do schools using PBIS have less bullying and harassment? And I would say if schools that are using PBIS are also doing some work around bullying and harassment, a component of PBIS is social skills instruction, which would include some instruction around bullying and harassment. Hopefully those schools would be seeing a reduction in bullying harassment. And what we know is that when school climate is improved, bullying and harassment decreases. So the hope is that in a PBIS school you're improving school climate. But I don't know that there's actual studies that have been done to show a reduction in bullying and harassment in PBIS schools. The next question is, how long does it take a typical school to implement all three levels, universal, targeted, and intensive of PBIS? And we tell schools that you really need to commit for 3 to 5 years to be able to see full implementation and to be able to see success. A lot of schools see success right away and see a reduction in the number of problem behaviors, but they really need to commit for that 3 to 5 year period to be able to see full implementation and full results. And the last question is, at PBIS schools, is it only the adults who are recognizing the positive behavior, or do students recognize other students for showing positive behaviors? So that really depends on the school. So for instance, when I was at Dothan-Brook School, when we were running small groups, depending on the purpose of the group, sometimes we would have the students recognize each other for positive behavior at the end of the group, and we really worked on making that feedback be specific. So they couldn't just say, you did a great job in group. We had them really think about what was it that was a good job. So today in group, you really listened when I was talking to you, or today in group, you worked really hard to stay focused. So we did have the students recognize each other. So it really depends on the classroom and the different adults in the building, how they have students recognize each other, but that definitely can be a really positive part of PBIS. It just can get a little bit tricky if students are only recognizing their friends for positive behavior, so there have to be some expectations set up around how students recognize each other. So I think that's all the questions we have. Thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar. Please visit Vermont Family Network's website at vermontfamilynetwork.org for more helpful resources, upcoming webinars, and other workshops and events. This webinar will be archived along with all of their other webinars and can be viewed on Vermont Family Network's YouTube channel. And if you'd like to talk with someone at VFN, please call 1-800-800-4005. Have a great day.